ending their political careers. They'd be deselected as MPs if they go ahead today. And the most senior of them is the former Chancellor, Philip Hammond, and he's here in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
What are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to support the bill that will be introduced tomorrow if we're successful with this motion today. It's a very modest bill in its ambitions. It seeks to extend by 3 months the period before we leave the European Union, so that if the government is successful at the October Council in getting a deal, it will have the time it will need to legislate and get that in place so that we can leave.
Do you think you have the numbers?
And if the government is not
today?
Successful, it will allow Parliament the time it will then need to decide how to proceed.
Do you have the numbers?
I think so. Obviously, the government whips have been running a pretty aggressive operation, threatening people, offering people inducements. But I think we will have the numbers. Many colleagues have been incensed by some of the actions over the last week or so. And I think there's a group of Conservatives who feel very strongly that now is a time when we have to put the national interest ahead of any threats to us personally or to our careers.
And that group has been numbered at around 20, and that's what you're expecting, are you, to be joining you in the lobbies?
Well, I think there'll be enough people for us to get this over the line today.
And what then would happen? What would you expect to happen to you and to the other people who voted as you're intending to vote?
Well, all sorts of threats are being made, and we've heard these kind of threats before, most notably to withdraw the whip. But this is a threat being made by a government, 8 cabinet ministers in which have themselves defied the Conservative whip this year on the issue of Brexit. It would be rank hypocrisy to withdraw the whip from those of us who
They seem pretty determined to do it. Can they do it? Well, in your case, you've been readopted, haven't you, by your local party. Now, is it possible, from your understanding of the rules, that number 10 simply say Philip Hammond may not stand in his constituency at the election?
No, so there are 2 separate issues here. There's the question of the whip in Parliament, and of course the government, the party, can choose to withdraw the whip if it decides to do so. And there's a completely separate issue about the selection of candidates for election. I've been readopted as the chosen candidate for my constituency association, and all these things have to be done in accordance with the party rules. But can I make a broader point?
Well, no, I'll allow you to make a broader point on this debate, but just sticking on you are intending to stand at the election, aren't you?
I am.
Are you intending to stand as a Conservative?
I was adopted last night as the Conservative candidate for Runnymede and Weybridge.
Do you believe that number 10 has the power to stop you standing as the Conservative candidate?
I don't believe they do, and there would certainly be the fight of a lifetime if they tried to.
A legal fight, presumably?
Possibly.
So you would fight, and you would fight if necessary to make sure that you are the Conservative candidate.
A lot of my colleagues have come under immense pressure. Some of them have responded to that pressure by saying, enough, I'm going. That is not going to be my approach.
We heard from Justine Green.
This is my party. I've been a member of this party for 45 years. I am going to defend my party against incomers, entryists who are trying to turn it from a broad church into a narrow faction. People who are at the heart of this government, who are probably not even members of the Conservative Party, who care nothing about the future of the Conservative Party.
You're referring there to Dominic Cummings.
I intend to defend my party against them.
Do you believe that Dominic Cummings is not a member of the Conservative Party? As we were hearing yesterday, I think David Gauke suggested he didn't think that he was.
My colleague David Gauke suggested yesterday that he is not a member of the Conservative Party. It's my understanding he's not and never has been a member of the Conservative Party. I haven't heard a denial from Downing Street. Perhaps they'll issue one if that's not the case.
Are you expecting that there will be an election now?
I think my view has been that Prime Minister Johnson has always intended that there will be an election, despite what he says. He has a majority of 1 in Parliament. It's not unreasonable to think that a Prime Minister with a majority of only 1 would want to think about the timing of an election to try to get a better majority. I suspect the question is a tactical one about timing and about who to blame for the election when it happens.
What would you say to Labour, who are plainly struggling now with whether to say, because they would have to vote in favour of a sizable number of MPs, you need a two-thirds majority for it to go through. What would you say to them about the decision they have to make?
So I think the decision that the Labour Party has to make is whether to honour the pledge, which I understand that Jeremy Corbyn made to the other opposition party leaders last week, that he would prioritise supporting cross-party legislation to block no deal on the 31st of October over a general election, and that he would not support a general election until this legislation was in place.
Right,
I hope that he will honour the commitment that I understand. I wasn't at the meeting, but I understand that he made that pledge.
My understanding, we were talking to Shami Chakrabarti just a little bit before 8 o'clock. She seemed to be suggesting that sequencing was important, and if it were possible that you could pin down Boris Johnson and say we will have this election well before October the 31st, then it seemed to me from what she was saying that Labour was minded to say yes, but you're saying don't even do that.
Once an election is called and Parliament is dissolved, the Prime Minister has control over the election date, and he can change the election date by proclamation.
You think he could do that? He might do that?
He has the power to do so, I understand.
And you think Boris Johnson might do it?
Well, any Prime Minister might choose to change the election date.
No, but I mean, if a guarantee was given that it would not be changed, you would not necessarily believe that guarantee.
I'm not sure what form that guarantee would take. My position is clear. I will not support a proposal to dissolve Parliament for an election until this bill has completed its passage through Parliament. At that point, if the Prime Minister chooses to go to the country, then of course I think he should be able to do so.
Turn to the substance of what you're proposing, you and your fellow rebels and the other MPs who support the bill today, or the seizing control today, and then the bill that you bring tomorrow. We heard from Dominic Raab earlier in the programme. It would usher in a period of paralysing uncertainty. It would delay, he said, if not cancel Brexit.
It will certainly delay the exit date. That is the purpose of it. Look, the government is being, frankly, disingenuous. It says on the one hand it wants to do a deal, and on the other hand the backstop must be totally removed from the withdrawal agreement, and we must leave on the 31st of October.
They say they're making progress in exactly that direction.
There is no progress. There are no substantive negotiations going on. Boris Johnson went to Berlin 12 days ago and he said to Angela Merkel, give me 30 days and we'll have resolved this issue. 12 days later, Brussels, Berlin, Paris are still waiting for the UK proposal.
Isn't that your fault, though, and your fellow rebels?
No, it is not.
You are taking away the leverage that he says he needs in order to force people on the other side, on the European side of these negotiations, to accept that he has the power to do this, and it's you who are undermining it.
He's talking nonsense. The European Union's position has been clear and consistent throughout. They haven't changed their position at all. Their position is that the backstop will have to remain in the withdrawal agreement, but they are prepared and were always prepared to negotiate with the UK about how alternative arrangements can be brought into force to make the backstop recede into insignificance. That is the key, using alternative arrangements to render the backstop unobjectionable and ultimately redundant. But no progress is being made because the UK government has tabled no proposals. And I suspect the reason is that the UK government itself has concluded, as leaks have suggested, that there are no alternative arrangements that would be implementable on the 31st of October that would meet the EU's red lines. And therefore anything that the UK government does propose is likely to be rejected as unacceptable.
A large-scale piece of deception on behalf of the government.
I don't speak for the government. I'm a backbench member of Parliament. But I would like to see, and I've written to the Prime Minister and asked him, I would like to see the UK's proposals published. I would like Parliament to have sight of them before the debate today. I would like them to be submitted to the European Union urgently, and I would like the European Union's response to be made public, so we all know whether there is any truth at all in the narrative that there is a negotiation.
There will be.
There isn't even a negotiating team. One of the first acts of this government was to dismantle the negotiating
Final
team.
couple of thoughts. There were levers up and down the country saying, look, Philip Hammond, you stood on a manifesto that said no deal is better than a bad deal. You promised that no deal was part of the armoury. That was the essential promise, wasn't it, of the May government? And then it turns out it never was. And all that has been revealed, really, is that you didn't mean what you said then.
Not at all. I accepted the result of the referendum as soon as it was announced, and I have been working ever since to ensure that we leave with a deal that will protect British prosperity and British jobs in the future. And the truth is, we have to get a deal that protects our country. We have to get a deal that protects our economy, protects our union, and protects our security. And we are making no progress towards that at the moment.
A thought about Sonia Khan, this aide to Sajid Javid, who was sacked apparently by Dominic Cummings, escorted out of Downing Street by an armed police officer. How would you characterise her treatment?
Shocking. And let me take the opportunity, since I'm on air, to say for the record that I have had no contact at all with Sonia Khan since I left Downing Street.
The suggestion was that she'd had contact with your people, though, with your other advisors.
I can't comment on who else she might have talked to.
So that is possible.
But she's had no contact with me. I've had no contact with her. She, ironically, is a very firm Brexiteer. She didn't agree with my position on Brexit, but we had a very good professional working relationship. She did her job very effectively, and it's extraordinary that Dominic Cummings should have chosen to pick on her.
If she went to an employment tribunal, would you support her?
If she went to an employment tribunal, it would be nothing to do with me, but I suspect she would win her case.
Philip Hammond, thank you very much for talking to us.